Hello, my name is Marcia Hutchens, and I'm a travel agent with Coasters and Castles Travel. My family and I recently embarked on a 7-day Disney Alaskan cruise, and we spent a few days in Seattle prior to the start of our cruise. Now, the Disney Alaskan cruises sail out of Vancouver, but we decided to fly into Seattle because it's not a place that we're nearby or visit very often. So we really wanted to take advantage of being in the area. And so we spent a couple of days in Seattle and then a couple of days in Vancouver prior to our sailing. So this video is just going to be a little summary of where we went during our time in Seattle and some of our highlights. So here's a picture of our group, minus myself, and we had just landed at the airport. The flights had gone really well, so that was pleasant, and we were just waiting for the van to come pick us up. Keep in mind, we were 10 people, 17 pieces of luggage, so that was a little bit of a challenge to maneuver us all around, but we managed. We checked into our hotel, which was the Embassy Suites near King Street Station, and then we traveled over to Tai Tung for dinner. We had gotten there in the early evening and decided this would be the place where we wanted to go before heading back to the hotel and just kind of settling for the night. So here's the menu, and it was all done family style. They started out by bringing everybody the hot tea, which was nice because it was a little chilly at that time, and we were able to enjoy that. And then this is just some of the food that we ordered. I'm going to be honest, I can't remember the name of everything, but it was all very good. And it was nice. They had this huge Lazy Susan in the middle of the table, so we could just spin it around between the 10 of us. And then they ended the evening with the fortune cookies, which my kids loved opening them and reading everybody's fortune. They loved it so much that they gave us an extra bag of fortune cookies to take on the road, so that was very sweet. And Tai Tung Restaurant is known for being a favorite restaurant of Bruce Lee in Seattle, so we all got pictures there with him. And this was his booth, which we sat right next to. That was the booth they would always sit him in whenever he'd come to visit. After dinner that night, we decided to go ahead and walk back to our hotel. It was just about a 10-minute walk there to King Street Station, the Embassy Suites there at King Street Station. And it was very pretty, cool weather, so it was a great way to walk off the dinner we had just had. The following day, which was our first full day in Seattle, we took a couple of Ubers, because again, remember, there's 10 of us, and it's hard to find an Uber that will fit all 10 of us. But we Ubered over to the Starbucks Roastery and Tasting Room. We did try to get there early in the morning because we'd heard that it can get kind of crowded, and I will admit it was pretty crowded when we were in there. But you can see you walk through these beautiful wooden doors. And then first thing when you get in there is a bunch of the merchandise that they have. Lots of different coffee cups, different things of coffee to buy, cups, bags, you name it, it's in there. We didn't purchase anything that morning, but just kind of looking around, a lot of eclectic pieces. So something very fun for that area. And then they had kind of one side of this area over here is where they had pastries, sandwiches and stuff. Right here they had the bar. So a lot of the Starbucks, if you wanted to somehow have it in a alcoholic beverage or non-alcoholic, they could make it for you too, but that's where they had the bar. And then up here, the pastries and sandwiches and items. It was a pretty long wait to get the items that you wanted, so just mentally be prepared that it may take a while. But everything that we ate was very delicious, so it was all good food. In this area of the roastery, you can see they had a lot of the whole coffee beans that you could have scooped into a special bag and purchase. Here you can see they have the machinery where they would roast the beans, get them mixed, have them put inside of the bags to sell later on. So it was an actual working roastery while you're there. It wasn't constantly running, so it wasn't super loud, but every once in a while you would notice a new section of the roastery would start doing some kind of work. So you can see in this picture, it had it bagged and they were going down that conveyor belt. A little bit later, you saw in one of the roasting machines, it dumped a whole bunch of the coffee beans and they were just getting mixed together. And this is another view of an area in the roastery. You can see there's the gentleman that's waving his hands around, and he was actually giving a tour to a group of people. I did look up online, and I was trying to find, do they just randomly give tours throughout the day, or do you have to book it or have a group? From what I found online, it did say that you needed to book a tour. You could book a tour for a group. So these people that were all together seemed kind of random. I'm not really sure. But I ended up kind of just standing to the side of them and following them around for a little bit and listening to what the gentleman had to say. And it was very informational. He was very entertaining, talking about the process of the roastery there and everything that they do. So that was really enjoyable. I suggest if you're going to stop by and visit there, try and find out about getting a tour, because I'm sure it was interesting more than what I saw. After we left the Starbucks roastery, we took a short walk down to the monorail and bought tickets to ride, which was going to lead us to this area where the Space Needle was. So here we are coming off the monorail, and it opened up to this almost park area. They had a lot of street vendors who were selling food or different crafts of items. We did discover that once we got there, that if we had wanted to go up in the Space Needle, we should have made a reservation, because we were there, I think it was about 11 o'clock in the morning, and the next time that they had available for people to go up to the Space Needle would have been a reservation at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and we really hadn't planned on sticking around that long. So instead, we kind of split up. And here's one of the children's play areas that they had. It was right next to the Children's Museum. And there were kids everywhere climbing on the structure, swinging in the swings. This is where me and my son kind of hung out for a little bit before we went to the Children's Museum. But it was a great little play area. I wish there would have been more seating for the parents. Thankfully, it wasn't very hot. There was a good breeze, but we were just kind of watching, and I had to stand for a while. But a very beautiful area right next to, like I said, the Children's Museum. And right there is the Pop Culture Museum, which part of our group went to. So I'll show pictures of that in just a little bit. So we were all kind of in the same area, but we went to different places, which was nice because you kind of got to choose where you wanted to go. So like I said, my son and I, who is 8 years old, we went to the Children's Museum, which was a very short walk from the Space Needle. It was right next to that play area that you just saw. We kind of walked through a building, and it was inside, but there were signs where you could find it. And when you first enter, it's not a really huge space. The second floor is actually where they have a couple of food places. But it kept us entertained for about an hour and a half, which was greatly appreciated. I really don't think he would have enjoyed the other places that everyone else went to after we kind of met up and talked about that. So this was perfect just for us. You can see they had a lot of interactive exhibits. He was in this forest area. He was hiding in the tree stumps, going through the forested area and playing around. So he had a good little time. It was worth the time that we spent there for him to be entertained and to have a little fun play area to discover. Here, a little bit further in the exhibit, they had this rock area that you could climb up, and there was a slide, and they had this camping equipment that was set up that you could play with, kind of pretend if you were camping up in the mountains. In this section of the museum, you could build different streets with materials and then race the cars down them. So this kept his attention for a little bit, but he moved on pretty quickly from here. This was another area where the child would crank the wheel and it would move the balls around, and then you could watch them go through the different areas. And so he liked that. The one bad thing about it was you could only do one person at a time. So he kind of had to wait for a while for all the other kids to cycle through, so then it could be his turn. You could also put on little plays where they had a stage with these puppets. So other members of our group went over to the Chihuly Museum of Glass there in Seattle. And again, it was right next to where the Space Needle was located. So a very easy walk, same as the group that went to the Pop Culture Museum. And for those of us that went to the Children's Museum, they said it was completely beautiful, amazing pieces of artwork and sculptures that they had, not just inside the museum, but also outside. And so they had a lot of fun just looking around and kind of being in awe of this amazing space. So this would be a great place to visit for any group, I think, because it's just so beautiful. And the last part of our group was able to go over to the Museum of Pop Culture and explore around there. The Museum of Pop Culture, if you remember earlier in the video, it was right there next to that play area, next to the Children's Museum. So it was very close. Again, we were all in the same area. And with the Museum of Pop Culture, they did say that there were a lot of different exhibits from different eras, very interactive. They had different video games you could play with and kind of try to manipulate. They got to go into a recording studio and record a song. Again, none of them really know how to play a musical instrument. One of them does, but I believe it's the French horn. So I think that was interesting for them to get in there. I believe they recorded a happy birthday to our Nana, whose birthday was coming up. So you can see from a lot of these images, all different kinds of things from many different eras, and some nostalgic to kind of the more mature group, and then some of them new discoveries for the younger ones. And here's just a little bit of proof of their musical capabilities in the recording studio. But you know, it's something fun to do, and if you can go in there and have a good time, no matter whether you know how to play a musical instrument or not, it's a great time for all to be had. Once we left the area where the Space Needle was, we walked down to the Pikes Place Market, and that's where we were going to get our lunch for the day. We really didn't have a plan on lunch. It was just an idea that we would walk around till we found something to eat. So that was interesting, again, to try and figure out how to please 10 people. But we ended up splitting up, as we usually do, and then just finding what everybody was good with. After we had finished walking through the market, we visited the infamous gum wall, and some people in our group did contribute to the gum wall. I was not one of those, just something about it wasn't quite for me. After our afternoon at Pikes Place Market, we did have a reservation for dinner at Ivar's Acres of Clams. It was very good. I would highly recommend it. It's right there on the water. It was a very beautiful venue. We were actually able to see a few of the ferries that were coming in and out and loading and unloading all of the people and the cars. So that was really interesting to watch. So as we were leaving our dinner that night, this was another just funny part of our adventure. There was this man dressed up as Captain America, and he had this cart where he would drive people up and down on the seawall, and he would jump on and off the cart and had music blaring. It was a very funny thing to see. He was very popular because in the time that we were waiting for our rides to come pick us up, he probably had 3 different groups of people that we had seen. So again, we were staying at the Embassy Suites there at King Street Station, and they had this automatic butler robot. His name was Milton, and my kids were fascinated with him. I tried to look up online what you could order at the hotel to have Milton come to your room, and in the end, when I couldn't figure out what to do, I called the front desk on our very last night, and I just told the man, I said, my kids really want Milton to come to our room. What do I need to purchase to get him up here? And the gentleman at the front desk, he was so very nice, and he said, don't worry about it. I'll send Milton up with something for you. And just a few minutes later, we got a phone call in our room, and it was Milton saying he was at the door. And when we opened it up, there he was, and he had 4 full-size Snickers bars that they had sent up. So that was just a great treat. I thought I was recording it, but I realized later I didn't hit the record button. So sorry you're not seeing that in real time, and all I have are these pictures, but the kids just loved that experience. And finally, on our last day, it was really the morning, we headed over to the Amtrack train station, which was right next door to the hotel, so we just walked our bags right over. And we took the train over to Vancouver, which was the next part of our adventure. The building was so beautiful, very historic. I'm so glad this is actually us going in the night before. And we went in and talked to the little information agent right there. I'm so glad we did, because we were able to figure out you had to go in one area to purchase tickets and to drop off your bags. And then you would go to this line that you're seeing right here for check-in. So I feel like if we would have walked in that morning, we probably just would have headed here first and not been in the right place. I would recommend, if you are planning on taking the train, at the beginning we didn't think there was a weight limit on the bags, and that's one thing we did discover by going in the night before, that they did have a 50-pound weight limit. So that really helped us in packing, because we had to make sure that all of our bags were underneath that. and then just kind of seeing where we were going to line up. One thing you do have to prepare yourself for with the Amtrak train is they have a line that morning that you get in to take your turns to load up onto the trains. But really, once they let that line start moving, it is a free-for-all. And they just basically say you have the last, 3 or 4 car trains to get into. And it's kind of a mad dash. It's a little bit different if you're not used to it because there's not assigned seatings. It's just first come, first serve. And so, again, if you've got little ones, which we did, thankfully they gave us family boarding. And so we were able to get in a little bit earlier than the general line. But even with the family boarding, it was just a large group of people and they just said, have at it. And so all these parents with kids and strollers and everything. So just be prepared. It's probably not like anything you may have experienced before. And so you've just got to be ready to have everybody's hand and walk as fast as you can to try and get a seat. Well, I hope you enjoyed this little snippet of our adventures in Seattle. I want to thank you for watching. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below.